If you have a little brother, you've probably been irritated by something he's done at some point. When you hear what my little brother does, you might not think yours is so bad. My brother actually reminded me of our old dog, Lefty. When Lefty passed away, he must have eaten everything possible by that point. We had him from the time I was a baby, and he had a real fetish for eating strange things. What he liked the most, which happened to be the most problematic, was staples. We couldn't leave anything around the house that had a staple in it. Not such a big deal when we were little, but once me and my brother were in school, so many things came home with staples in them. Newsletters, booklets, handouts, papers, pretty much everything. We had to get his stomach pumped so many times. We ended up taking out pet insurance as it was getting pretty expensive. When I went to school with the excuse of my dog ate my homework, it was tough not to get a mocking laugh from the teachers, but it was the legit truth. Lefty lived a long life, longer than most dogs. They say cats have 9 lives, but in Lefty's case, he had more than 9 lives. When my little brother started putting strange things in his mouth, we thought he was imitating the dog. At first, it was simple things, just gross food items. He would squeeze the life out of the ketchup bottle and then eat it with a spoon. It would make me and my parents gag. Then it was mustard, pretty much any condiment. Then he went to stranger things. We would be at the park, and he'd be putting sand, dirt, grass, leaves in his mouth. Basically, whatever he could get his hands on would end up in his mouth. Most of the time, he would just chew it for a while, then spit it out. As he got older, the problem just seemed to get worse. We thought it would get better with age. We thought maturity might curb that impulsivity. Instead, the things he put in his mouth just seemed to get stranger and more extreme. One day, my mom freaked when she had left my little brother alone for 10 minutes to find him in her room trying to eat a sock. She had to pull it out from his throat and said that he was halfway to swallowing it whole. At that point, my mom and dad were starting to worry there was some kind of disorder or condition at work. They took him to a pediatrician and she examined him, asked him a bunch of questions, and tried to get to the bottom of why he felt the need to try and eat everything. She asked us about his diet and what types of foods he ate. It didn't seem like it had anything to do with actual eating or lacking anything in his diet, so the thought was that it was psychological. We were told to keep a journal of what he put in his mouth and when he did it in case there were any noticeable triggers or patterns. After a month of doing that, there didn't seem to be anything that helped us understand. One day, we had a real scare. We were at the park, all of us, and Connor was sitting in a sandbox. We all knew enough to not let him out of our sight for a minute, but suddenly, he started coughing, eyes watering, and crying. Of course, right away, my mom panicked, thinking he had eaten something he found in the sandbox. He was getting more and more upset and his eyes were watering more and more. The coughing and sputtering was dramatic, so we all loaded into the minivan and headed to emergency. When you tell the nurse in charge that you think your kid ate something but aren't sure what, they get you in pretty quick. He got an x-ray done and cried the whole time. When the doctor came out to show us, we could see a cluster of small objects sitting in his stomach, one higher up and a couple farther down. The doctor suspected they were rocks, which made sense considering it happened in the sandbox. The doctor said that in these types of situations, it was best to let them pass on their own. At this time, Connor was sick, so he was potty trained, but we had to know when and if he had passed the rocks. Every time he went to the bathroom, one of us had to go with him. When it was number 2, the gloves had to go on and a full examination had to be done. I was beyond disgusted, and while my parents assured me that they would do the sifting, if they weren't home, I would have to do it. The doctor told us there were 3 rocks that had to get passed. He said the danger was if they were jagged and did any damage on their way out. Basically, we had to watch him like a hawk, and it was starting to really get to me. Not only did he eat everything in sight, but also happened to be the loudest kid around. It didn't matter where we were. Connor's voice always rang out louder than all others. We always joked about knowing where Connor was. I loved my brother, but I most definitely did not like him all the time. I guess that's how parents feel a lot of the time too. So 2 days after that fateful day, Connor was straining over the toilet. I called my mom and she came running. Connor was crying, which was worrying. We were concerned that it was cutting its way down his GI tract. From the look of the x-ray, there was 1 larger rock and 2 smaller ones. None of them looked particularly jagged, but we didn't know what to expect. When he finished, my mom reached in, scooped out the poop, and started sifting through it on a plastic bag. She screamed when she found a rock. She was so happy. We looked at Connor and my mom checked down below. There didn't seem to be any tears or cuts, but we were told to bring him in after passing each stone so they could check. After that first stone, which appeared to be the biggest one, the doctor figured the other two would come out easily, and they did the next day. We all breathed a sigh of relief, but lived in fear of him eating something really serious. His awful habits seemed to be tapering off a bit as he got older, and the next year, he only ate a couple of inappropriate things, as far as we knew. We thought maybe we were in the clear. The day I walked into my room to see him with a tampon string dangling out of his mouth, I thought, oh, great, we're back. I yanked it out of his mouth and ripped the box out of his hand. He looked shocked, like he had no idea what he had done wrong or why I was mad. I ran downstairs to tell my mom, and she almost started crying. It was at that moment that I realized how stressful this was for my mom. I couldn't imagine constantly living in fear. I mean, I was scared too, but not to the level that my mom would have felt. I got a lock put on my door and suggested we do the same with every room in the house. It was extreme having to carry keys around inside your home, but it kept the things in the bedrooms out of Connor's reach, and the areas we had to watch him in, the living room and kitchen, were more containable and manageable. We all had our set of keys and had to keep them on us at all times. Connor seemed to have developed a taste for my tampons, and sadly, one had escaped from my purse one day, and Connor ended up grabbing it and swallowing it before I had even realized what happened. He was choking. He started to turn red, then blue. We had all taken first aid in anticipation of a moment like this, so I was somewhat prepared. I grabbed Connor from behind, wrapped my arms around him, and started to squeeze as hard as I could. When the tampon shot out and hit the wall, it slid down with a disgusting sound. I called my mom right away, and luckily she was just around the corner. She raced in the front door, and for the first time ever, I saw her really lose her temper. She grabbed Connor and started to shake him. "What's wrong with you?" she screamed. She was losing it. The pressure of waiting for your child to choke every second was taking its toll. Connor wasn't used to being yelled at or handled that way, so he started bawling. I told my mom she needed to cool down and take a break. I took Connor into the next room and tried to calm him down. With him snuggled into my arms, sobbing into my shirt, I actually felt sorry for him. I quietly asked him why he had picked that up and put it in his mouth, and he answered simply, "Because I wanted to." "Well, as long as you have a good reason," I said. By the time my dad got home from work, he had missed all the drama. My mom had calmed down and apologized over and over again to both of us. I told her it was okay and that she didn't have to. I told her I would have lost it long ago if Connor were my kid. My mom was so grateful I was there, and so was I. It wouldn't have taken much longer before he lost consciousness. I was sure of that. Seeing his lips turning blue made me realize how precious those moments are, those moments to respond. I thought of all the first responders out there who were the first on the scene for things like this. I thought about how awful it would be for someone to walk into a house like ours too late. That day changed my life. Until that point, I had had no clue what I wanted to do with my life. But after that, I realized I wanted to be there to help people when they were at their worst. I decided I wanted to become a paramedic. The training was intense, and from my research, I learned that it was one of the most stressful occupations around, not to mention one with the highest suicide and divorce rates. I knew it would be a stressful and challenging job, but thinking how it felt to save Connor that day made me want to chase that high forever. I knew I would lose patience. It was bound to happen, but I figured if I could just save one kid, one person, save one family the kind of pain we would have felt had things turned out differently for us, it would be worth it. When I graduated from high school, I started my training. On day one, we had to stand up with our class and tell everyone why we wanted to become a paramedic. I told the class about my brother's condition, how stressful it was, and how I had saved him that day. If I hadn't had that training, I wouldn't have had a clue how to react that day. When someone asked what he had eaten, I got quite the laugh when I said, "One of my tampons." I still look back on that day and wonder what path I would have gone down if Connor hadn't eaten my tampon and almost choked on it. To watch more animated story videos like this, hit that subscribe button. And tell us in the comments section what you thought about this story.